Yes, I recognize the package.
What do you recognize it to be?
Have my name on it, and then the description of the location that I collected was inside the trunk interior fender, well interior side, left side area, and it's a petri dish containing dirt particles. And that was a tag number H52025, and it's item number 6.
Do you indicate on the exterior the date and time of collection?
Yes, 7/18/2008, about 0016 hour, which is a midnight, 12:16 a.m.
Once that item is collected, is it placed into this package and sealed?
Correct.
Let me show you what's been marked as HX for identification. Tell me if that's something you recognize as having had contact with it in the past.
Yes, I recognize the package, and it's dated 7/18/08, and time was 12:05, the time that I collected, and was located inside the trunk interior fender well area, the right side, and it's a petri dish containing dirt particles with hair.
Once that item is collected, is it placed into this package and sealed?
Correct.
If I may have HU, HW, and IO for identification. Let me show you what's been marked as HU for identification. Tell me if you recognize this article.
Yes, I recognize the package, the package, excuse me, and was dated 7/22/2008. The time was 18 hours, which is 6 p.m. And the location collected was on the spare tire cover of the vehicle Florida tag G63X Victor, and it's a petri dish with hair, and it's a tag number H52025, and it's an item number 7.
Once this item is collected, is it placed into this package and sealed?
Correct.
Let me show you what's been marked as HW for identification. Do you recognize that as something that you've had contact with in the past?
Yes, I recognize the package. It's a tag number H2025, item number 8, and was located on the spare tire cover well of the vehicle. Tag G63X Victor is petri dish with hair, and is item number 8.
Once this item is collected, is it placed into this package and sealed?
Correct.
You may. Yes.
can come back to that item if I could just have HY. How do you take a look at this item? Tell me if you recognize it as something you've had contact with in the past, and if so, what is it?
Yeah, I recognize the package, and it's tag number H52025, item number 9, and was collected in July 23rd, 2008 at 16:28 hours, which is 4:28. And the location of this evidence was on the bottom of the edge of the radiator vehicle, Florida tag G63X Victor, and is a dry vegetation.
Once you've collected that item, is it placed into this package and sealed?
Correct.
If I could have IA for identification. If I could approach the witness with IA for identification. Tell me if you recognize this item as something you've had contact with in the past, and if so, what is it?
Yes, I recognize the package is tag number H52025, item number 12, was collected at July 23rd, 2008, about 23:48 hours, which is 11:48. And the location of this piece of evidence was located on the seat underneath of the black shoes. Is an air freshener sheet, which is a dry sheet, and have my name on it. And it's a item number 12.
Is this the dryer sheet we saw in the photograph in the back seat of the vehicle?
Correct.
Once it is collected, is it placed into this packaging and sealed?
Correct.
All right. If I could have HZ. ID, IE, IF, IG, and IH in sequence. If I may show the witness HZ for identification.
You may.
How do you take a look at that? Tell me if it's an item that you recognize as having had contact with in the past, and if so, what is it?
Yes, I recognize the package is a tag number H52025, item number 14, was collected at July 25th of 2008, about 14:03 hours, which is at 2:03 p.m. And the location of this piece of evidence was on the right side of the trunk liner vehicle, Florida tag G63X Victor. Is a Petri dish with hair, and is item number 14.
Once that item is collected, is it placed into this package and sealed?
Correct.
Let me show you what's been marked as ID for identification. Tell me if you recognize that packaging, and if you do, what is it?
Yes, I recognize the package is tag number H52025, item 16, and was collected on July 25th, 2008, 14:08 hours, and was located on the middle of the trunk, the liner, in the vehicle tag number G63X Victor. Is a Petri dish with hair, and it's item 16.
Once that item is collected, is it placed into this packaging and sealed?
Correct.
Let me show you what's been marked as IE for identification. Tell me if you recognize that as something that you've had contact with in the past.
52025 is item 17 and was collected in July the 25th 2008 at 14:10 hours, which is 2:10 p.m., and was located on the left side of the trunk of the line of the vehicle tag G63 X-ray Victor, and it's a Petri dish with hair. And that will be item number 17.
Once that item is collected, is it placed into this package and sealed?
Correct.
Let me show you what's been marked as IF for identification. Tell me if you recognize that item as something you've had contact with in the past, and if so, what is it?
Yes, I recognize the package. Is tag number H52025, is item 18, and was collected in July the 25th, 2008 at 14:15 hours, which is 2:15 p.m., and a location of the item was on the left side of the trunk of the liner, vehicle Florida tag G63 X-ray Victor, Petri dish with hair, and is item 18.
Once that item is collected, is it placed into this packaging and sealed?
Yes, correct.
Let me show you what's been marked as IG for identification. Tell me if you recognize this as something you've had contact with in the past, and if so, what is it?
Yes, I recognize the package. It's a tag number H52025, item number 19, and was collected 14:18 hours, which is 2:18 p.m. Location of this particular evidence was on the left side of the trunk of the liner, vehicle Florida tag G63 X-ray Victor, and it's a Petri dish with hair.
Once that item is collected, is it placed into this packaging and sealed?
Correct.
Let me show you what's been marked as IH for identification. Tell me if you recognize what's contained therein, and if so, what is it?
I recognize the package, and it's a tag number H52025, is item 20, and was collected as July 25th, 2008 at 14:20 hours, which is 2:20, and is the location of this piece of evidence was in the left directional wire vehicle, the Florida tag G63 X-ray Victor, and it's a Petri dish with hair, and that was collected from a directional wire of the vehicle, which is inside.
Is that the wire to
The directional lights, yeah.
turn signal?
Exactly.
Once this is placed into this packaging, once this item is collected, is it placed into the package and sealed?
Yes.
Witness with II for identification.
You may.
Have you take a look at this item? Tell me if you recognize it as something you've had contact with in the past, and if so, what is it?
Yes, I recognize the package is tag number H52025, item 21, was collected in July the 25th, 2008, 14:22 hours, which is 2:22 p.m. Location of this item on the left side of the trunk, the liner area, vehicle Florida tag G63 X-ray Victor, and it's a Petri dish with hair. And this is item 21.
Is this the item, the single hair that we saw in the photograph with the directional pointer 12?
Correct.
Once that item is collected, placed into the Petri dish, is it placed into this packaging and sealed?
Correct.
Okay. Do you place your initials then on the seal to ensure that it is not tampered with in any way?
Correct.
Is the same true for all of the evidence items that we've been discussing?
Correct.
If I may have IK, IL, IM, IN, and O, if we can locate that one. And they may be.
Sure.
Stand down as it relates to this exhibit.
Yes, you may. Witness may stand now. Can make sure he faces the court reporter so she can hear.
There are four evidence items associated with this box: IK, IL, IM, and IN. Can you first take a look at the entire package and tell me if you recognize it as something that you've had contact with in the past?
Yes, I recognize the package.
Right, and what do you recognize this to be?
Have the day that I collected, and there's some labels in this area, the day that I collected and the time. And
What is it?
this is the identification of the items that I collected. Is a label with the sheriff's office label. They say that is the tag number H52025 and was collected on July 17, 2008. And that was collected from the interior of the trunk, which is Florida tag, vehicle Florida G63 X-ray Victor. And the description inside this box is the right side of the trunk, the liner, the left side of the trunk, the liner, and the spare tire cover of the liner, and then have my name on it.
All right, so contained in this box is that trunk liner that we saw in the photograph once it's removed from the vehicle.
That is correct.
All right. Did you have to cut it in some fashion?
Yes, especially the spare tire cover to collect some evidence, but the left side and the right side, these two pieces, the right and the left in the center, I don't cut it, I just remove the parts from the trunk, which is one piece on the left side, one piece in the center, and the other piece of the right side of the light trunk. So it is three pieces, and I put it inside the box with the spare tire cover.
May the witness resume his seat.
Witness may resume his seat.
Thank you, Your Honor.
May I have a moment? May I have a moment to open the box?
You may.
May the witness stand down again.
Witness may stand down.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Just grab it. This one. That's good. We got it.
IK for identification is Article 22, a piece of the spare tire cover. Do you see that inside the box?
Yes,
Can you retrieve it?
sure.
Actually, that is IN, which is Article 26. Is that the spare tire cover?
Correct.
Okay. Can we step to that side?
Sure.
Article 22, which is IK for identification. Is that Article 22?
Yes, that is correct. Article 22.
And what is contained in Article 22?
Is contain a piece of spare tire cover that was collected from the spare tire cover well.
That is IK for identification. I can hand that to the clerk. Okay, are there other items inside the box?
Yes. The left side of the liner the black plastic cover from the edge of the trunk, and the other side is the right side of the lining of the trunk. There's a right and left.
All right, the left side of the trunk is IM for identification, the right side is IL.
Left.
And the right, which is I-L.
This is the right side.
Okay. If the witness could resume his seat.
Witness may resume
okay.
his seat.
All right, if I may have I.J. for identification.
You may.
Let me show you I.J. for identification. Tell me if you recognize that as something you've had contact with in the past.
Yes, I recognize the item, the package is tag H52025, item 27, and was collected in July 28, 2008 at 13 hours, which is 1 p.m. And location that I collected this piece of evidence was the spare tire cover and was 2 swabs that I collected from the spare tire cover.
Once those swabs are collected from the spare tire cover, do you put them in this packaging and seal it?
Yes.
All right. Any luck in locating I.O. for identification?
Gentlemen of the jury, we're going to take a 5-minute stretch break to 5 minutes past the hour of 4.
All rise to the jury.
Okay, stay recognized, presence of the jury.
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, you may continue.
All right. If I may approach the witness with items I.O. for identification and H.S. for identification.
You may.
Have you take a look at this packaging and tell me if you recognize it as something you've had contact with in the past?
Yes, I recognize the package is a tag number H51977, item number 2, was collected in July 17, 2008, about 00:30 hours, which is 12:30 a.m., and was collected from the trunk of the vehicle G63 X-Ray Victor. And the description of the evidence that I collected is piece of a stained spare tire cover.
Once that piece of the spare tire cover was collected, was it placed into this box and sealed by you?
Correct.
Is this a piece of this tire cover that we've seen as IN for identification?
That is correct.
I am going to show you HS for identification. Have you take a look at this box and tell me if you recognize it as something that you've had contact with in the past?
Yes, I recognize the package, and it's tag number H52025, and it's item number 31, was collected in July 25th, 2008, 17 hours, which is 5 p.m., and was collected from the vehicle tag number G63 X-ray Victor, and the description of the piece of evidence is a piece of a spare tire cover collected from the vehicle.
Right. Once that piece of the spare tire cover was collected, was it placed into this box and sealed by you?
Correct.
All right. Is this item in HS for identification from the item IN for identification?
Correct.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce IB for identification into evidence, which is identified as a hair, article number 1.
What says the defense?
Page 4 of the report.
You may. Be received in evidence as states numbered.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce IC for identification, which is article 2, identified by the witness as a sheet of air freshener.
What says the defense?
No objection.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce HT for identification into evidence, which has been identified by the witness as dirt residue with hair, article 4.
No objections.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
At this point, I would seek to introduce HX for identification into evidence, article 5, Petri dish containing dirt residue.
No objections.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
At this point, I would seek to introduce HV for identification into evidence, identified by the witness as a Petri dish containing dirt residue, article 6.
No objections.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
I would seek to introduce IA for identification into evidence, identified by the witness as an air freshener sheet, article 12.
No objections.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce HZ for identification into evidence, article 14, identified by the witness as a piece of hair.
No objections.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce ID for identification, article 16, identified by the witness as a hair.
What says the defense?
No objections.
Pardon?
No objections.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
At this point, I would seek to introduce IE for identification into evidence, article 17, identified by the witness as a hair.
No objections.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
At this point, I would seek to introduce IF for identification into evidence, article 18, identified by the witness as a hair.
No objections.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
Move to introduce IG for identification into evidence, article 19, identified by the witness as a hair.
No objections.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
Move to introduce IH for identification into evidence, Article 20, identified by the witness as a hair.
No objections.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
At this point, I would move to introduce II for identification into evidence, Article 21, identified by the witness as a hair.
No objections.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
Move to introduce HU for identification, Article 7, identified by the witness as a petri dish containing hair.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
Move to admit HW for identification, Article number 8, identified by the witness as a hair.
No objections.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
Move to admit HY for identification, Article 9, identified by the witness as vegetation.
No objections.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bloise.
Good afternoon, Counselor.
I want to start back with the Pontiac Sunfire when it first arrived. The first thing that you did is do an external visual, did you not?
Yes, the first things that I did was exterior inspection of the exterior of the vehicle. Yes, correct.
And then subsequent to that, what you would do is do an internal inspection.
Correct.
In plain English, look inside the car.
Correct.
Okay. And that would include the passenger side,
Correct.
the driver's side,
Correct.
the back seat,
Correct.
and the trunk.
Correct.
Now, I heard you testify earlier that you, upon opening the door of the car, you smelled decomposition.
That is correct.
And you specifically use the word decomposition because you don't know if it's human or non-human, correct?
Correct. What I used was a decomposition.
Okay. And that just basically means something is decomposing.
Yes.
Okay. And that could be animals,
Yes.
that could be meats,
Yes.
and that also can also be human.
Yes.
Now, you also testified about being able to smell various bodies at various stages of decomposition.
Correct.
And that would include basic stages of decomposition, would it not?
Yes.
And these are in various environments.
Correct.
Various environments, I'm sorry.
Very small.
Now, one of the common things that you see when you see a decomposing body are maggots.
Yes, depend of the stage.
right, the
Of
stage.
of the body at that time. When it's full, completely decomposed, yes.
And depending on the stage of decomposition, you would see anywhere from thousands of maggots to even hundreds of thousands of maggots, would you not?
Yes.
Not to say that you would sit there and count them, but you could photograph them and you'd be able to see that, correct?
Yes, it's possible.
And this would also include puparia, that basically when the maggots hatch, they're shells.
Yes, but in that particular question or statement that you are doing right now, that will not be my expertise. I know that human decomposition is in different stage, but talking about that specific topic, it is not my expertise.
I
So
understand.
I don't feel confidence talking about that specific topic.
I understand. I only want to ask you about things that you've seen in your experience.
Okay.
Visually. I'm not going to ask you to identify any
Okay.
entomology or any entomological evidence, okay?
Thank you, Counselor.
No problem. All right, now, sir, you also testified that you've gone many times to medical examiners' offices to take fingerprints of decomposing bodies and things like that.
Yes,
However, would you not agree that when you go there, what you mainly smell is formaldehyde, the chemical?
yes,
Okay. You don't really know you're smelling, you just smell it, do you not?
just smell, yeah.
And that's what medical examiners use to preserve tissue.
Yes, but in different areas. Because when I go to, in this case, take a fingerprints of any decomposed body, it is a different area of the medical examiner. So most likely, there's no any kind of chemicals in that area, just the body inside the freezer.
But when you go into any medical examiner's office or any medical examiner's area, that smell is everywhere, is it not?
It's correct.
And you also smell fecal matter as opposed when a body is decomposing, do you not?
Yes,
And those are different sources of smell, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly what comes from what.
well, depends, once again, if I'm doing fingerprints on decomposed body, I know that smell from a decomposed body. It is because that smell is unique. For instance, when I have my first case with a decomposed body in Puerto Rico, that smell, when you smell it, you will never forget that smell. So that is, I want to differentiate between the chemicals that you're talking about using at the medical examiner's office, and then, with the dead body, in a stage of full decomposition state is completely different. So it's unique, and in my personal professional opinion, you will never forget that smell once you have that experience in your life.
And also, sir, there is different smells with different stages of decomposition. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, the only different is the odor when start to do the decomposes smell, but a week, I can say that. But when he's a full decomposition, is very a strong smell.
Mr. Boise, if you can
Yes.
answer my question, sir, please.
I'm sorry, yeah.
My question is, at different stages of decomposition, you have different smells, do you not? For example, let me expand upon that. For example, once a body's orifices are exposed, that smell is different than that of a newly deceased body that just began to decompose. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree with that, yes.
Now, you also testified about the gas gauge in the car.
Correct.
However, you didn't take the car out for a spin, did you?
No,
So you don't know if after driving it a certain period of time, that gas gauge just sinks down.
no,
And all you can testify is that you put gas in the gas tank and it rose up a little bit.
correct.
Now, the air freshener sheets that you got you also talked about, actually, let me ask you this. Were you given any information about that car prior to you receiving it?
The only information that I obtained from the detective is that the vehicle was related with a missing child.
Okay. So you were not informed that Cindy Anthony had put those air fresheners in there?
No,
You were not informed that she sprayed the entire car with Febreze?
no.
And the dry leaves that you found underneath the chassis and underneath the car, they're of no forensic value, were they not?
Depends. If we have a standard to compare with, that will be a forensic value for that piece of evidence.
But as far as you know in the work you've done, those leaves, those dry leaves, have no forensic value to this case.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to any response will be based on hearsay.
Not necessarily, Judge.
Sustain.
Were those dry leaves sent out anywhere for analysis?
My best recollection, I was submitted to a lab.
And did you receive any results that may have assisted in this investigation?
Not to my best recollection, no.
Now, as part of your examination, you then began to focus on the trunk, did you not?
Not necessarily, just
After the inspection?
exterior, after, yes.
Yes, sorry.
All right, no problem.
Now, part of your inspection is you did a thorough search of the trunk of the car.
Correct.
And part of that thorough search is going through there with tweezers and pulling out hairs.
After I removed the liner, yes.
And in addition to that, you also did vacuumings.
Correct.
And the vacuuming of the car, when I say that, I don't mean you're vacuuming to clean the car, right?
Correct.
It's a handheld device that has a filter that catches anything that would catch any evidence that you might have.
That is correct.
And that's the purpose of it, because it would be even more thorough than something than an inspector looking at it through the naked eye,
It is correct, yes.
and pick up the most minute articles that might be in that trunk.
Correct.
Now, in addition to that, you used what's called an alternate light source, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And what this does is this gives different reflections, so you might identify stains in the trunk of the car.
Yes.
Doesn't necessarily mean that those stains are of forensic value, but it would be exactly where you may want to concentrate on.
Correct.
For example, if you have a bed sheet and you're looking for a speck of blood, the alternate light source would be able to help you find that that's not observable to the naked eye.
Correct.
So when you did that, you found a portion of the car that had a stain, did you not?
Yes.
And it's not uncommon to find stains in trunks of cars, are they?
It is possible that we found some stains, yes.
It's fairly common that everybody's got trunks, they throw things in there, and sometimes they stain their trunk, right?
It is possible.
Okay. Fairly common though, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now that you've been able to identify a specific stain, the next thing you do is you utilize a product called Blue Star.
Yes, I use a chemical that we call Blue Star.
Now, Blue Star is similar to luminol, but it's not luminol, right?
Correct.
In fact, Blue Star is one of the leading forensic tools to help you identify blood.
Correct.
And this is important, obviously, in a case like this, because if you have blood in the trunk of a car, that would certainly be important.
Correct.
And what Blue Star does on top of things is that luminol does not, is it actually exposes the stain for a longer period of time.
Correct.
And it's even better than luminol because at certain times, there's certain items that it would identify that luminol does not.
Correct.
And it also limits the false positives, meaning it's a banana stain instead of a blood stain.
That is correct.
Now, when you sprayed the stain area with Blue Star, tell the jury what the results were.
Negative results.
Now, subsequent to this, you did what is called a presumptive test for that stain, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And this is taking it a step further, that you have basically a forensic tool that will give you, I'm trying to break this down a little bit more plain English, is it will give you a preliminary result of whether that's blood or not.
That is correct.
And tell the jury what the presumptive test told you.
When I performed the presumptive test on those specific areas that I observed what appears to be a blood, negative results.
And finally, while we're dealing with that stain, you can take things a step further and swab them for DNA.
That is correct.
And you actually did that in this case. Even though the Blue Star was negative, and even though the presumptive test was negative, you took it a step further and were even more thorough and swabbed it for DNA.
Part of the protocol is to collect swab samples from the area, yes.
And are you aware of what those results are?
No, I did not.
Okay. You wouldn't have received the results back from the lab as to what the DNA results were of that
If you're
stain?
talking about the swab samples?
Yes.
Your Honor, I object. He's asking for a response to
Sustain.
hearsay.
We'll come back to that. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the hairs in the trunk. You initially found, upon your first inspection, how many hairs, sir? And please feel free to refer to your report and any notes that you may have.
Hairs by hand, in total,
Correct.
12.
Okay.
And
Let me stop you there for a second. We're gonna take this one step at a time. When did you first collect the first set of hairs?
that was collected in July 17, 2008. That will be the tag number H52025 that was found in the front edge of the vehicle. That was the first one.
Okay. Now, these hairs are of multiple sizes, are they not? Lengths, I should say.
That one in particular was long. The other one that I talked about in Q12 was pointer 12. I can say a little longer too, but the other ones I can't say the size.
They were different sizes and colors, were they not?
I can say I can't testify about that because I don't know.
From what you observed, sir.
Well, what I observed on the first hair, yes, I can say is a longer. In Q12, which is, a pointer number 12, which was Q12 when I submitted to the lab. Yes, I can say that because I observed that was a long hair both. But the other ones is very hard to tell because was collected by the vacuum. I don't know if those hairs was inside the dirt. I can't say that.
And how many hairs did you select individually, not from the vacuum?
I said before 12 by hands.
How many? 4?
12.
12 by hand. Okay.
Yes.
And some of them were dark brown.
I don't remember right now the
Okay.
color.
Some of them, do you remember if some were blonde?
Your Honor, I'm going to.
I don't remember.
Already indicated he does recall this time.
Sustained.
You also found animal hair in the trunk of the car, did you not?
No, I can't say that. I don't know if there's animals or not. No.
We'll get back to that in a few, but let me ask you this. Now, you're experienced in trace recovery, are you not?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
You're experienced in trace recovery, are you not, sir?
I have some experience, trace, yes, evidence.
And what that means for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury is recovery of evidence that is trace evidence, the minute amounts of evidence. Very
Yeah.
small pieces, which would include hairs,
Could be, yes.
textile fibers, and a whole array of different things.
Yes,
Now, as part of your job, of course, you don't want to contaminate anything that you're inspecting, right?
correct.
And you would then wear a white jumpsuit?
Correct. Tie
And that-
bag.
And that's what you
Tyvek.
did in this case.
Correct. Tie bag and hairnet and yes, and gloves.
I'm getting to that. You also wear a hairnet so none of your hair gets in the trunk of that car.
Correct.
And gloves so none of your DNA would get in that car as well.
Correct.
And oftentimes you'll even wear a mask.
Yes.
I notice you got a little shrubbery there. All right, so this is all to protect further contamination of the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
And you take all of these precautions because hair is one of the easiest things that shed on a human being.
Yes.
In fact, we shed hundreds of hairs every day.
Yes. I say so. Yes.
And that's what assists you in your job.
Correct.
And to find hairs in the trunk of the car is fairly common.
I don't say that it's very common.
Okay, let's explore that. I take a sweater off, I throw that in the trunk of the car. Is it possible a hair will transfer from that to the car?
Well, in that kind of examples that you gave me to me, Counselor, yes, it's possible.
If I have clothing or a backpack and I have hair on the backpack, I put it in the trunk of the car, that will transfer hair.
It's possible, yes.
And this car is how old?
I'm sorry again.
The car that you inspected, sir, how old is it?
I believe it's 98.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was over 10 years old when you inspected it.
Yes.
And over 10 years, there's going to be quite a bit of trace evidence that might be in that car.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to asking witnesses to speculate.
Sustained.
Have you ever inspected older cars?
Object to the relevance.
I think it is.
Overrule as to that question. Question calls for a yes or no answer.
Sometimes.
You sometimes.
Depends what you use the definition of old cars means.
Cars that are 10 years or older.
Yes.
And those are usually much more dirty than a car that's maybe a year old.
Depends the owner.
But generally speaking, wouldn't you agree?
I agree, but depend of the owner.
All right. Now, did you send each and every single hair to be tested for mitochondrial DNA?
Yes. That my best recollection, yes.
So it's your testimony that every single one of these hairs was tested for mitochondrial DNA.
I send it to the lab, but I can't say that every single one was tested by mitochondrial DNA. I can't say that. I just submitted to the evidence to the lab but the decision of what kind of a specific test will be run in that specific item, that is not my decision, it's the decision of the lab.
And for the benefit of the jury, the mitochondrial DNA is the type of DNA that's generally used when identifying hair.
Your Honor, I'm going to object outside the stated expertise of the witness.
Sustained unless there's a foundation laid.
You're aware what you actually send pieces of evidence to labs all the time, do you not, sir?
Yes,
And you're aware, and I'm not asking you to be a DNA, if you're a DNA expert, but you're aware of which pieces of evidence are generally sent to which departments of the lab, are you not?
correct,
Like you would send a bullet to ballistics,
correct,
like you would send a fingerprint or a latent print to an analyst that would look at fingerprints.
correct,
And you would send hair towards mitochondrial DNA as opposed to nuclear DNA.
Once again, when I submit here, my explanation in the sentence is for DNA. Whether or not about the mitochondrial DNA is not my decision. The only things that I put in my submission is DNA. That specific term, mitochondrial DNA, it is not my decision to make that determination to run that particular piece of evidence and that particular DNA for mitochondrial DNA. That will be by the lab, not by me.
All right. Investigator Bloisy, let's go back to the hairs. You got 12 by hand,
Yes.
correct? And then you got how many by the vacuum?
May I check
Absolutely, sir.
notes? 11 vacuums.
So now you have a total of 20, oh my goodness, 23.
Yeah, approximately, yes.
All right, and subsequent, and that's after inspecting the car how many times?
The vehicle I inspected about 12 times. Well, 12 times, yes, about 12 times I inspected the vehicle.
So that vehicle, and particularly the trunk and its liner, were searched top to bottom.
I can say that I searched the trunk I did best I can, but I think that I inspected very well the trunk of the vehicle, yes.
You did a very thorough job, sir.
Yes, yeah.
And in fact, this car is probably the most thorough you've been on any car.
I'm telling you right now, based on my experience, I have previous vehicles that I have to inspect it, that I have to spend days. This is not the only car that I inspected.
I'm not saying it's the first time you've ever searched a car
Okay.
that often, but it's right up there with the most amount of times you've ever searched a car.
The time, yes,
Okay.
I agree with that.
And subsequent to all of this, you were also present when the defense inspected the car.
Yes, in one occasion, yes.
And we contracted Dr. Henry Lee, did we not?
Object and ask for further-
Sustained. Just a second, the court reporter. Okay. Until I tell you to proceed, when the court reporter goes over there, she has to sit down, reconnect her machine, and put her headphones on. She cannot take down while she's moving. Are you ready, Madam Court Reporter? Ms. Burdick?
I understand, Your Honor. Move to strike the question from the record.
Okay. I'm not going to strike it from the record, but I will advise the jury to disregard the last question. Okay, you may continue, Mr. Baez.
Yes, sir, thank you. Mr. Bloisy, the defense went and inspected the car.
Yes,
And during the defense inspection, that consisted of the trunk liner.
Correct.
And while inspecting the trunk liner, additional hairs were found.
That is correct.
And you collected these hairs.
Correct.
And you submitted them as evidence.
Correct.
And there was also, on the trunk liner, certain animal hairs that were pointed out as well.
I don't have any recollection about the animal hairs on the trunk.
Did you not take notes, sir?
Yes, I did.
Do you have those notes with you?
No, I destroyed the notes. This is my notes.
You're referring to your report,
My report, this is my notes.
but you destroyed the notes from which you wrote that report?
Correct, and based on the legal bulletin that we have at the sheriff's office,
Sir, just answer the question if you can. All right.
yes,
Now, you wrote this report and I know you've written multiple reports, but the report relating to the car and the vehicle inspection was written January 1st of 2009.
correct.
And this was approximately 6 months after you had inspected the vehicle.
That was let me explain that, to clarify that.
Answer the question, and then you can explain.
Yes,
Okay.
may I explain?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Constable. That specific day is the date that my supervisor reviewed my report, and then that is the date that he signed it for, after he reviewed my report. But all my reports that we have is 43 pages, and is made by activity log investigation is by day. So what he did is always, as a procedure, the supervisor reviewed the report and signed the date that he reviewed the report.
So let's see if I understand your answer correctly. So what you're saying is you wrote the report, it just wasn't reviewed until 6 months later.
Yes, he reviewed it that date that is signed by my supervisor, which is 1st January 2009. I'm sorry. That was January the 1st, 2009.
Now, you testified on direct about some garbage that you received as evidence, did you not?
Garbage. I don't recall the
Garbage that was turned over to you?
Oh, you're talking about in my report?
Yeah.
Yes, trash, yes.
Trash, garbage, sorry.
Trash, yes.
Okay, so you had some trash that was given to you, correct?
Correct.
And this was moist garbage, was it not?
Trash, yes, moist.
Moist trash, okay. You prefer the term trash?
Yes, because I put that in my report, trash, and I would like to use trash in my report.
All right.
I try to be accurate
So you-
in my testimony here, because I use trash, and I would like to use trash.
That's okay, we'll talk trash.
Okay.
Now, in this trash, there were multiple packages of food.
Yes,
I'm going to object. This is outside the limited scope of direct at this point.
Overruled.
On page 23 and 24 of your report, there are 37 items of garbage, trash, that was recovered and listed as evidence, was it not?
correct.
Okay. And rather than read them all into the record, I'd like to point out a couple of items for you, if I may.
Go ahead.
There was a bottle with chewing tobacco spit in it.
What number is, please,
sure.
Counselor, if you help me?
Sure. It's not in here, is it, sir? Can you look at it from 1 to 37 and see if you can identify a bottle with chewing tobacco spit in it?
The only things in the page 23 that I found, which is number 5, is an empty circular metal box, Copenhagen tobacco, with number SLN817A. That is related with tobacco. I don't see anything spit over there. Let me see. In page 24. Item 13, Counselor, empty crystal light bottle, 60 ounce, proof of purchases number 31600244701,
And
with brown liquid.
that's the brown liquid.
Yes, the brown liquid.
Did that appear to be chewing tobacco spit?
I can't say that. It's very hard to tell that.
Okay. There were also other packages of cheese.
Yes,
In fact, 3 boxes of Velveeta cheese.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. This is outside the scope of direct. I have not talked to this witness at all. I did not, only with Awilda McBride.
With this witness?
Not yet.
Let me think for a second. You're correct. Sustain.
I will move on, Judge. I thought we went into that area, but if that's what the court's
No, I was
recollection.
the other witness that identified the photograph that received the trash out of the pane. So
Sure.
state is correct.
Your Honor, I'll reserve my other questions for this witness as we go into those other areas.
Okay.
Thank you, Investigator Bloise. Appreciate it.
thank you, Counselor.
Any redirect as to those areas?
Just a few. Investigator Bloise, I wanted to clarify when you referred to the negative results as a consequence of using Blue Star on either the interior or the trunk of that vehicle. What are the negative results for?
For blood.
Negative for blood. Okay. When you are inspecting a vehicle or preserving evidence, you take notes, handwritten notes on a notepad, piece of paper. How do you accomplish the recording of what you are doing and when you are doing it?
Yeah, handwriting, a piece of paper, and in the activity log, yes.
Okay. After you complete your processing of whether it be a vehicle or any other item of evidence, do you then take those notes and create a report from your notes?
That is correct.
Okay. And then at that point, once your report is created, is when you destroy the notes pursuant to Orange County Sheriff's Office policy.
Correct.
What's the objection?
Yes. 1, it's leading. 2, the answer relies on hearsay.
As to hearsay overrule as to leading, sustained, rephrase your question.
Once you have written a report from your notes, what happens to the notes?
With the notes, as soon as I finish my report, I destroy the notes based on Legal Bulletin 97-09 made by the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Based on this legal decision, and then I destroy the notes.
You had indicated during cross-examination that there are universal precautions taken to prevent cross-contamination of evidence. When Mr. Baez referred to a defense inspection of the vehicle, did those individuals inspecting take those precautions?
By the defense,
Yes.
could say yes.
Did they wear hairnets?
Not specifically a hairnets, just gloves, but no hairnets.
Just gloves?
Correct.
Based upon the experience that you have told us about, do you have an opinion as to whether or not the odor that you smelled in the car was of a particular type of decomposition?
Correct.
Do you have an opinion?
The opinion, yes, a human
no,
decomposition.
objection.
What's the objection?
Proper predicate. This witness isn't qualified to give a opinion. He's not an expert in the field of human decomposition.
Objection overruled. He may answer the question.
Based upon the experience that you've described, do you have an opinion as to whether or not the smell that you smelled in the vehicle was of a particular type of decomposition?
Correct. Based on my 23 years experience and sometimes 30 or 40 times to dealing with fully decomposed body, yes, I can determine. Professionally speaking, my opinion is that it was the smell of human decomposition.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's all I wanted to follow up with.
Recrossing to those areas and those areas alone.
Yes, sir. The notes that are since destroyed could never be inspected by the defense, could they?
No.
And you can't testify that there are things in your notes that are not in your report, can you?
Once again, Counselor and members of the jury, everything that is reflected in this report is accurate to my handwriting.
My question was, sir, because you don't have the notes, you can't testify that everything in that report was what's written in your notes.
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled, he can answer it one more time.
Again, everything that I did with my handwriting notes is reflected in this report.
It's not the question I asked you, sir. I said you can't testify because you don't have your notes that everything that you had in your notes made it to your report.
Objection asked and answered.
Now, I just want to be clear. During cross-examination, we were clear that you used the word decomposition, correct?
Correct.
And you also testified that the reason you chose that word was because you couldn't determine which type of decomposition it was. Do you remember testifying to that?
Correct. But I used that terminology in a simple way, decomposition. That was my intention when I put that in my report.
Correct. And when I asked you that that's because there are different types of decomposition, you answered, that's correct.
Correct.
And that's why you did not specify human decomposition, correct?
It's possible, correct.
However, when Ms. Jane Burdick comes up and does redirect, it's now human decomposition.
Yes, because she asked me about based on my experience, then I can say on my experience, can say that.
And when you testified earlier about decomposition, You weren't talking about your experience,
Because they don't ask me that question.
but you weren't talking about your experience is my question.
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Were you talking about someone else's experience, sir?
Objection, argumentative, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Were you referring to someone else's opinion?
Your Honor, objection. Relevance.
Overrule as to relevance.
Were you referring to someone else's opinion?
Not my opinion.
Your opinion. Thank you,
Correct.
sir.
Thank you, Counselor.